I hesitated 10 years before actually getting started on my passion project, my podcast, Entrepreneurial. Chances are, if you're here watching this video right now, you also have a project that you've been thinking about doing, but you can't seem to make yourself do. I want to share my 5 tips on what I did wrong and how you can get started with your project today. My first tip is you need to ask directly for what you want in order to get what you need. I was asking my prospective interviewees, hey, I think I want to do a podcast. Would you be down to do an interview with me? If you ask a question on a maybe basis, chances are you're going to get a response that's also a maybe basis. You have to ask confidently, hey, I am starting a podcast. Are you free next week for an interview? Granted that you already gave some background about your podcast. Second, my tip would be to create real deadlines so you have no chance but to deliver. Once I scheduled that first interview, I didn't have a chance to back out. Set the interviews as soon as you can and make sure you follow through. By setting up my first interview as soon as me and my prospective interviewee was available, I set a deadline that was coming up soon that I had no choice but to take. The third is you need to identify the most important task that will get the ball rolling and complete the most important task first. I made the mistake of spending time building a Squarespace website, a WordPress website, so on and so forth. And starting a website, for example, is a low barrier way to just get things started, but I would never quite finish working on those websites because I had no real reason to. And that's how my idea ended up staying with me, and I didn't actually end up taking the real action that's required. My fourth tip is if you can't seem to do something, you need to change the systems around it. I was stuck in this mind frame of I need to do an interview, transcribe it, and write an article, and that made me feel a little lazy about it. Instead, I listened to my friends and I decided to record a podcast. While podcast editing is definitely tedious, for me it was less of a mental barrier to do. My fifth and last tip is to take irreversible action. For me, that's meant paying for a 1-year subscription service instead of paying monthly for things like my website, my music and sound effects software. And by doing that, not only is it cheaper, but it ended up creating this real sunk cost so that I not only need to start my project, but I also need to continue working on it. Thanks for being here. These are my 5 tips, and this is your sign to get started on your project today.